Hello and welcome to a special episode of Ask Al. This video is based on a question submitted by a fan for an episode of Ask Al. However, on this particular subject, I wanted to go into further detail, and so this question and its answer will be the subject of the entire video. Yurdake Cataline asks, heart versus brain, which one to follow throughout life and why? Just for fun, I have to answer literally first. The heart just pumps blood and is actually reliant on the brain to operate. But obviously you're referring to emotional reactions and reactions versus rational ones. So which one should be followed throughout life and why? I'm going to go about this in a somewhat unorthodox manner, by giving my ultimate answer first and then go on to explain my reasoning. You should follow both logic and emotion, not necessarily in equal proportion, and with emotion under rational guidance at all times. First, I'll start with emotions. As I've said in other videos, emotions exist for a reason and are not there to make your life more difficult, though they usually seem to. Each one has a purpose. Fear, for instance, is a way for your brain to cause you to take action and get yourself out of whatever circumstance is causing it. It is a method of self-preservation. Anger is too in some ways, though usually less about self-preservation and more about preservation of the things you care about in general, be it people or objects. Happiness is a way of reinforcing actions or events which are beneficial to you, and promotes the continuation of that activity or environment. Sadness is essentially the opposite of that. It discourages or is aversive to the actions and events which are not beneficial or are deleterious. Obviously, going into detail about the different reasons you could be sad or happy, etc., would be overly complex and unnecessary to the points I'm making here. The point is, emotional reactions are not inherently wrong. In fact, they're just right. There are two main problems in this area. One, the emotion is invoked by the wrong stimulus. For example, if someone buys you a gift for your birthday and gives it to you, and you then respond with immense fear and run away screaming, there's a problem. 2. The emotion's magnitude is either too high or too low. For example, if you spill some milk reaching for your glass, it is natural to get frustrated about it and feel some anger for a moment. However, if you go into a blind rage over it, there's another problem. There are proper and improper reactions to everything, and the same goes for the extent of the reaction. So then, how do we overcome an improper one? First, you have to identify it. Emotional awareness is key. Paul Ekman, one of my favorite psychologists and authors, has done a lot of work in writing about emotional awareness, and has an incredible interview on YouTube with the Dalai Lama. I will provide a link to it in the comments section for you to watch after this video. There are always 3 steps involved in emotional reactions. 1. The event or action which causes the emotional reaction. 2. Feeling the emotion caused by the stimulus. 3. Reacting based on the emotion. During the second step, you have to intentionally add a new step before step 3, the reaction. This must become habitual, and the only way to do that is to consciously remind yourself to stop and identify the cause of the emotion before allowing yourself to react to it. After doing this enough, it will become a habit. It will be effortless. Furthermore, I suggest actually using words to identify it. That sounds obvious, but a lot of people fail to realize that when thinking about things, they'll picture the general concept of it in their heads and go from there. But doing this leaves out details and allows you to skip over things, creating blank spots. What I mean by that is, when you think of things without verbalizing them, it's easier to move from one idea to the next on incomplete concepts. If you put it into words, it makes very clear to you the things you don't actually know. Statistically, a lot of geniuses talk to themselves, but it's not talking to themselves in the same way the mentally ill do. It's not a conversation with questions and replies. It's more of a narrative, a self-explanation. It's exactly the process I just described. Simply verbalize it. Talk through the situation. You may find that you're not exactly sure why you're reacting the way you are, even though before expressing it in words you were more sure of yourself. Verbalizing is an extremely useful tool for creating a conscious recognition about what you do and don't understand. Not just about yourself, but anything in general. Not to drag the point out, but I recommend everyone tries it. It will clarify what you do or don't really know. This also requires a good deal of self-honesty. You have to be willing to be honest with yourself and accept if what you previously thought turns out to be incorrect or flawed in some way. I think this is a good introduction to the rational part of the video, as such introspective actions are a logical intervention of the emotional process. Why is or isn't logic the right path? Well, an understanding of what logic really is should make the answer to this obvious. But it's because logic will provide you with insights and understandings about the world around you, the situation you're in, the events and aspects of the world, etc. As they say, knowledge is power. If you understand the causes of events in a fundamental way, you're much more properly equipped to handle the situation, or take actions which are advantageous to you. You may realize that a certain course of action is better than the first choice because you can predict its outcome. This is logic's edge over emotion. It allows you to predict, with some accuracy, what will happen in the future, based on what you already know. Emotion doesn't think ahead like this. It will only allow you to react in the present time, or, in the case of sadness/regret, cause you to think of similar situations differently in the future. It's very situational. Sometimes this causes learning from sadness or regret can give you an edge in the future, providing insights about the situation that in the past you may not have thought of. And sometimes this is for the better. More often, I maintain, for the worse. Emotions cause a bias towards light situations that you encounter later on. They cause a tendency to react the same way you did in the past. In other words, it's a self-reinforcing behavior. If your fearful reaction resulted in your safety in the past, then it must have been the right reaction, and therefore will be the right reaction again. In psychology, this is referred to as a heuristic. The method by which a problem was solved in the past will solve it again in the future. There's no need to reinvent the wheel. Heuristics are a useful tool, but have their negative effects. To make an extreme and probably flawed example of this, let's say every 6 months exactly, Mary gets into a car crash. It's always because of a person who turned in such a way as to force her into reacting to make a sharp left-hand turn. Okay, let's say this happens for 7 years straight. She's developed a heuristic of turning left in order to avoid the crash. Well, it's year 7.5 and another crash is due. This time, the driver who causes the crash turns from a different area, and in this new case, the proper reaction would be to turn right. However, because of Mary's heuristic to turn left when facing automobile danger, she reacts and turns left, crashing directly into him. Okay, you might think someone is just out to get Mary, but it is a flawed example. The point is, by reacting the same way, by developing a certain heuristic that works over and over, we tend to just blindly follow that heuristic when the situation is encountered again. The same goes with emotions. It's not a flaw in the emotional system, however. It's caused by a lack of attentive awareness of our own thoughts. This simply won't happen if you can employ the method I set out earlier. Once you start feeling an emotion of any kind, stop and identify the cause. Express it to yourself in words. This is a logical intervention to emotional reactions. Logic provides an understanding into the past, present, and future. It can tell you beyond a reasonable doubt what the correct response is in order to achieve a result in the end. It allows you to affect the outcomes of things within your power by understanding the underlying causes. Emotion can provide reactions for the present and sometimes to the past, but will never, or rarely, tell you how to respond in order to affect the outcome of things in the future. No amount of logic will prevent emotions from affecting us, changing our actions, or how we want to behave and do things differently. You can have a full, logical understanding that what you're doing makes no sense and will result in failure and duress. But if your emotions so incline you, most people will act on them anyway. Logic seems to run as a sort of parallel to emotion, not as a countering path of thoughts. True, it's a way of thinking that contradicts that of emotion, but it does not stop them. Of course, this isn't the case with everybody. There are some people who are primarily logical, others who operate mostly based in emotion, everything in between, and people on either side of the spectrum in the extreme, purely logical and emotionless, or purely emotional and don't think logically. No matter who you are, the same methods of introspection I talked about earlier can apply. Run an assessment. Odds are you already have something in your mind. You already know what you want to do, how you want to react, how you feel, but you may not quite know why. Now I want to talk about something a little different than emotions and logic. Some people call it instinct, some people call it a gut feeling. No matter what you call it, it's the same thing. This mysterious feeling is not just some ethereal knowledge bestowed to you by the gods or the universe. It is the result of your brain, nothing more and nothing less. Setting aside emotional reactions, your brain has two methods of analysis operating at all times: subconscious analysis and conscious analysis. The subconscious is the fast problem solver. It's what calculates the angle and power needed to throw a ball to your friend's hand. It's what gives you a gut feeling about this guy sitting across from you on the bus. You're not quite sure why, but it's unsettling to you. This is the source of your instincts or gut feelings. It's a rapid analysis taking place by comparing what you're seeing to deep, unconscious memories and then telling you how to react. But doesn't make explicitly clear the reasons for this feeling. You often hear the phrase, trust your instincts. It's because more often than not, these rapid analyses are correct. It's just that the reasons on which the deductions are based are unconscious, meaning they're not easily accessible to your conscious mind. The conscious is the slow problem solver. It's what you use to solve problems with deductive logic and reason. A lot of people are thrown off when you say that the conscious mind is the slow problem solver, but it's true. Have you tried consciously calculating the trajectory and power with which to throw a ball to your friend? Some of you more talented mathematicians might be able to do it, but I bet it's not nearly as fast as you can do it just by looking and throwing. Your unconscious mind makes incredibly rapid and accurate calculations all the time. It's much faster than your conscious mind, which brings me to my point. The same sort of introspection can and should be applied to this. When you get a gut instinct about something, it probably is right, but I don't think it's the right response to just trust it and act on it blindly. It could be wrong. You should pause and try to consider why this deduction was made. I'm using the word deduction very intentionally here. What your subconscious mind is doing is nothing short of a deduction, and if you can identify the reasons it was made with your conscious mind, it can act as a sort of rational shortcut to uncovering the truth. Your mind has already made the analyses and deductions. Why do it twice? Of course, sometimes you won't have time to identify those reasons in the moment. You may have to react faster than that. The point is, you can sometimes use this as a shortcut to a conscious deduction and get there much faster than you would otherwise. If you haven't seen it yet, go watch episode 2 of season 4 of Sherlock, the BBC series. In the beginning, he's interviewing a woman in his apartment, and unconsciously makes a few deductions that he's consciously unaware of the reasons for. He spends a few minutes trying to identify the causes of them. This is a wonderful example of what I've been talking about. So, to summarize, following strictly logic or emotions is the wrong way to do things. Unless you're a psychopath and can't feel emotions, then you should just work on your rationality. If you're extremely emotional and impulsive, work on creating the habit of introspection I talked about. Recognize why you feel the way you do before reacting. This will reveal to you either that your action wasn't justified or that it was, and you can proceed with it. There's no reason to follow only one and not the other. We have both, and both have their benefits. The best we can do is try to optimize the benefits of each by applying reasoning to emotion. Before I end this, I wanted to recommend watching Paul Ekman's interview with the Dalai Lama about emotional awareness. He also has a book about it, which I'd recommend as well. Thank you all for listening.